It's time to dad.
Hey guys, this is Joe with episode 2 of Time to Dad. I'm here with the guys. We got Nick, Luke, and Brian with us tonight. And we're going to be covering three, I think, really important topics. A little bit heavier than maybe episode 1. I know we had a lot of dad jokes and dad bods running around in their New Balance. But today we're going to be talking a little bit about knowing your worth, some career transition and hard choices that ultimately dads have to make. And I think one of the biggest that you see all the time people have trouble with is work life balance. I want to throw it over to one of the guys here to kind of lead us off and really just start us with knowing your worth, right? I think personally, being as an employee or an employer, I think this is a tough topic and something that needs to be juggled on both sides. But if whoever wants to kind of start us off and hit the head with this one, knowing your worth, wants to take it out for us today.
I'll jump in there, Joe. So knowing your worth can come down to two different spectrums. You can know your worth financially, and you can know your worth mentally, physically, and spiritually. On the knowing your worth financially, it's about knowing your skill set, knowing what you value in the place you work, and not accepting, how do I put it, in the most politest terms, not accepting a crap wage for something is worth so much more. There's a lot of workplaces right now that are going to try to lowball you just economy-wise because they want you to work cheaper. But what do you do when, they offer you $20 an hour and it's a $35 an hour job?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And I was just going to say, I kind of went through this. This topic came up in our list of topics. I think I threw that one in the hat. I kind of recently went through this situation with my employer, and I love my employer. They're a great employer, but we don't really have titles and role. Like now I am a senior electrical designer, but in the past few years, we didn't have titles like that. So everybody was engineer or designer or project manager. And I think that was kind of a downfall, is it wasn't enabling them to really take a holistic look at where people were salary wise, where they fell into the market. And then you add into that inflation, right, which is relative to everyone right now. It doesn't really matter how much you're making right now. You're feeling some sort of crunch, no matter how small it is. And so I just started looking around, and I'm like, great, I just got a raise. And then I look at the inflation rate, and really I'm behind the gun now for a second time. So I was already kind of feeling like I had taken on some new additional roles. I was already kind of feeling like I wasn't in the pay bracket I should be in. And then inflation hits, and it just kind of snowballed. And that was kind of tough for me, was, how do I approach this? And it was also kind of, and not just tough, but also a little bit scary. I sat down with my wife, and, I told her how I felt, and we both kind of agreed, like, you have to speak up about it. And that was a super tough decision and my boss, I mean, I've worked with him since I've been in the field. And so I kind of told my PM, hey, here's what I'm thinking. I looked around the market. Here's what similar designers, engineers are making. And he was like, yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you. And so my PM and my boss and we all sat down and we talked about it. And I said, realistically, I did some interviews up front because part of me was worried I was going to say, hey, I need more money. And they were going to tell me to pound sand. And so we sat down in that meeting, and I said, I've already done an interview. Here's what they're offering me. And long story short, so you guys can get some words in, basically, we ended up settling on a new salary for me. It was a little less than the other company had offered me. But like I said before, I love my company. So that was something I was willing to accept, was taking a few $1,000s less in a salary cut to stay with the company I love. But it's definitely tough and tricky. But I recommend anyone who really hasn't taken a look at where you are, taking a look at the market in your area to just take a look and see. And you may find that you're way behind the eight ball, even though you think you're in a good place.
Yeah. Nick, I want to interject there quick because I think a big thing for the listeners that I'm sure there's a ton of people that can relate with you right now in their specific situation, ready to have that conversation with their partner, their wife, and like, where did you go to look on the market? Like, what did you look at to find what your number worth that you thought you should get was? Like, was there websites? Was it asking around other people in the industries? Was it all because somebody might be sitting there going, and I want to ask for a raise, but I don't even know what to ask for because they don't know what the market is and their specific field.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. There's a couple things you can do. You can go to monster.com, put in your job title. A lot of companies will have a pay range in there, and some of them are ridiculously wide, so those aren't very useful, but you'll come across a few that have it pretty narrowed down, and you'll realize pretty quickly if you think you're not in the right range where you should be. So you got monster.com is one, any job finding website really. One of my resources in this was I went to a good buddy of mine who I used to work with that moved away. And I said, hey, does this salary sound right? And I kind of told him what I was making. And he was like, no, that doesn't sound right. And so that's when I really started digging a little deeper. But also, I mean, you can interview with somebody else as well. If you see a company that has a job opening for what you want to do, there's absolutely nothing wrong with interviewing with another company. So you can do those three things. And then like Glassdoor, you can go to Glassdoor as well and look at it. You can even look at your own company if it's a big enough company to be on there and see what people's salary ranges are.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Awesome. Hey, Brian, what about, I know you kind of mentioned that. I know you've been self-employed, so I think, right, that comes from a little bit of a different spectrum than maybe being the employee.
It absolutely does. I was actually just going to jump in there before you chirped in, and I wanted to kind of bring it down to and discuss kind of the mindset factor of it, because the logistic side of looking in your area field of what the jobs are paying, that is great. But one of the big mindsets that I think holds a lot of people back is taking that leap of faith, having that bit of courage, and really building that confidence in themselves to know in themselves, as exactly what we're talking about, knowing their worth deep within themselves, to have that confidence and have that ability to look into those other options, to go to their boss and have those discussions, to really physically and mentally know that you're worth more than a minimum wage job, that you're worth more than what people have said you're worth. It comes down to not always listening to the outer world, as I put it, and not always listening to that logistics of, okay, this job pays this and it pays between this and this, and these are the stat numbers, these are the logistics. Sometimes it's a little bit about walking in there with your head held high and going, I know I'm worth this dollar amount.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I think sometimes too is people think they're worth more sometimes than they are, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think I'm $1 million man.
Right? So we've all come across those, and then I know sometimes looking at the resume and people, when I'm looking to hire someone, and it's like every 2 weeks they're at a new position, and it's like, all right, well, do they think they're worth more, or are they just that bad that they get fired every 2 weeks, but they can find jobs?
Red flag right there.
Yeah. It's like
a lot of.
You're 24 and you've had 254 jobs. It seems like there's a little bit of a double red flag there, but
absolutely.
But it is a good thing, knowing your worth, and but it's a tough conundrum, for the employer, right? I mean, listen, Nick, your employer must have right? They value you to take that, because inflation, you mentioned inflation, it went up for us as individuals, people, and families, but it went up for business owners too, right? If they buy product, their product went up, right? Their inflation hit them just as hard. So to throw more money out again when they got hit the same way, it's that cutting bottom lines, and it is a tough, thing that we've all in America and Canada, right, Brian? Have all had to come for this past years that COVID kind of, I guess, bestowed upon us.
But I think, Joe, I got to cut in there, and I have to put this. I think that's where it creates the great debate between people and why you see such a turnover rate, because you have so many jobs that have created this hardship. And I get it, inflation, and everybody's counting their pennies. But it comes to a point, a very fine line that I don't believe a lot of businesses are recognizing. They're choosing the dollar amount over the value and the worth of somebody. A lot of the time, these businesses, they see a strict dollar amount and this is all they're going to spend and this is how it is. Yeah. When they have someone that deserves and is worth every penny that they're working for, but they're only making half of what they're worth. Because the company, it comes to me, it comes down to mindset and management. Now, I've worked for some incredible companies who step up to the plate and have installed things out here. We call it the standard living wage, or they've also implemented structures where the employees are being paid based on their value and their skill set. But it's such a mixed basket out there, and it's just the way of the world.
Yeah. Joe nailed it perfectly, saying a lot of people are not worth as much as they think they're worth. And I think there's a lot of people, especially the amount of easy money that was made through COVID and all that, people got used to having that little bit of extra money and got a little bit, this is what I deserve now. But they didn't necessarily get the skills in proportion to the extra money they got. So now when that extra money is gone, the skills are still the same from before. And now there's a sort of an imbalance as to what's going on.
Yeah, sure. Just to touch on Brian, just slipped my mind. Oh, you were talking about employers just, wanting to stack that paper and not really valuing people. And that is 100% the reason I chose to stay with the company I'm at and not make as much as I could if I had left for that other two companies actually that I interviewed with, was just because of the way they treat their employees. And so that kind of eased my mind a little bit. The way they handled the whole COVID thing, work from home, all of that, knowing our work slowed down significantly, and they handled that so well. But that's kind of another piece too of just your employment in general is really making, if you're at a company where you can just tell that, everybody's getting run into the ground, everybody will be talking about not making what they think they should be making. And those are the kind of companies you just kind of gotta man up and cut ties with them and do what you can to get yourself out of a toxic situation like that.
Sure.
That's where exactly I come from exactly the spectrum you're saying. The last couple employers that I ever worked for were very toxic environments, very much so based on a corporate structure of this is what it is, this is how it is, and nobody gets a penny less, penny more. And there was no change. If you could go to management 100 times over and be the best employee there was, working your butt off and be worth that value, and they weren't going to budge. And that's what really drove me into entrepreneurship, knowing my worth and knowing how I wanted to value others really drove me into where I am today.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, so that's not an easy choice, it's to do that. And that's kind of, why I think a lot of people sometimes there is unfortunately a cap on some careers and some jobs and opportunities. And, that's where the hard choice comes in. It's like, right? If you didn't get what you were asking for and they said, hey, listen, these are the numbers and they show you, but there's just no more room. Like they have to make a profit, right? As a business, and they're not making profit, there's no reason for them to be in business. That's where sometimes that hard choice comes in. It's like, hey, I know I've dedicated my life to this field and this career, but maybe that's where the transition into something new happens. And I do think COVID, obviously as terrible as it was great for a lot of people in that. I feel like I've talked to so many people that made that switch during COVID, that career transition. It was a hard choice, but I think sometimes it made it easier. Like Nick, you mentioned working at home. And now you talk to people, and some people are like, I'm not taking a job unless I'm working from home, right? Yep. I don't want to ever leave my house again. Screw New York traffic, right? And but that is a hard choice. If it's something that, hey, you went to school for it, you got your master's in it, you dedicated your last 10 years, 15 years to it, and now you're transitioning out of that career. Does anybody have like someone like that they know, or did that happen to anybody here? Or Luke, I know you have a few different things that you've done in your life, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to weighing up the pros and cons of the situation. Because if you've got a family and your family's really important to you, but you guys are struggling, and then you get a job offer with more money, but it's either longer hours or travel's involved, and now you got to be like, well, now you have to make that choice. Do I want more time with my family, or do I want to sort of try build a nest egg for my family so that we don't have to struggle as much? And that's a tough one, because
I think that
both of them are putting the family first in their own way.
I think that brings us to the really good question of career transitions and making those hard choices. I'm sure you guys have all done it lots. I know that I've done it plenty of times. Even right now, I'm in a position of on the hard choices, trying to figure out some big decisions. And how do you make that transition? How do you make those hard choices and solve that puzzle?
Yeah,
in the ships.
Yeah, I was going to say this. I'm in a couple different dad groups, and almost everyone, there's at least one post a week about a blue collar dad out there just working himself to death to provide for his family, and he's just legitimately at a loss of what the hell direction to go, because he realizes he's not getting family time. He is providing, right? So he may be bringing home a decent check, whatever field he's in. But at the same time, he's realizing he's missing out on family time. Maybe he's away a lot, just working crazy long hours. And it's just guys trying to figure out, hey, what is a career that I can get into? Maybe without a degree for some of these guys, or maybe their degree doesn't line up with what they think they may transition to. But that's a super hard choice for those guys. And I always read through the comments, because you never know when you'll find yourself in a strange situation where maybe it's not even that you get the feeling you need to make a career transition. Maybe it's not an option. Maybe maybe you get laid off and the market's just, it's not there for you for your career field. So you have to find something to do to be a provider. And I just see those posts and it kind of breaks my heart. But luckily, I always read through them just because there's so many good ideas about careers you can get started in. And a lot of times it's entrepreneurship. Like, hey, what do you like to do? Like, go out and do that. Is what a lot of guys will tell them. And if not that, they'll get them kind of started in a office admin role or something like that. But yeah, those posts kind of break my heart, and I can't imagine, kind of making that decision.
Yeah, it's definitely a decision a lot of people need to do.
I think people underestimate just how much people are struggling at the moment with that kind of thing. I'm also part of a lot of day groups, and it's every day there's these posts getting made, like, what can I do? Working 18 hours, 2 jobs.
Side hustles come up a lot too.
Yeah. That's right.
There's dads that they've made this transition, right? And they've found a job that kind of affords them some more family time, or, a better work-life balance. But then they've taken a pay cut. So I see side hustles come a lot. Like, hey guys, what can I do to kind of supplement my main income?
Yeah.
I think also you talk about taking the pay cut. I think once you've earned a bunch and missed the family time, the money isn't that important anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So if something comes up where you get more family time, it's almost like it's just a better option because you realize that the money actually holds way less value than the quality time with your family. But if you haven't had that sort of that experience, then the money's always going to look like the greener grass on the other side.
Yeah.
My question to you guys is, what's your perspective on making the hard choice to make more money but sacrifice your family time and on that short-term spectrum? I know plenty of guys, especially out my way, we've got a lot of oil rig work and a lot of camp work and stuff. And you can come home making $3,000-$4,000 a week. Like, the money is ridiculous. I know guys who are doing $200,000 a year or more, but they're gone. Probably a lot of them work 3 weeks on, 1 week off, or some of them work 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Like, these ridiculous schedules where they're gone to camp for periods of time, home for short periods of time, but they're making ridiculous money. So is it worth the sacrifice for a short period of time, or how do you justify that?
That depends on the person, I think, and it depends on your relationship. If you're married,
family, that's a conversation with the family.
Yeah, I mean, I did it when my oldest son was 15. I went through a bunch of bad stuff in South Africa and wanted to get out of it and go travel for a bit. I just, it was, the universe was definitely making it very clear I had to go. And so I sat down with my son and basically said, hey man, this is the deal. I want to go travel. How do you feel about it? And he was like, go for it. Like, yeah, there's no problem with it as long as I wait after his birthday and obviously come back and visit. But I wasn't, him as a mom and I were no longer in a relationship. So it's a lot easier to do versus now my wife would, there's just no way.
Hey, I'm going back to South Africa. See you later.
Yeah. So it's all just situation dependent. And I think it's who I am now. I wouldn't want to do it just because I know how much I missed out on not being in my oldest son's home when he was growing up, kind of thing. So I want to be there for every minute I can.
Well, I think that's a big thing. I mean, I'm only in one of the dad groups, which is the one, right, Nick, that that you found me through.
Yeah.
Where you put the post out, but I see so much in that. Like people like, hey, my wife left me. Or hey, I had to do this, and I don't get why I had to work because I was, we needed to provide, but I think a big part of that is, right. I mean, if we're all married, and it's communication, it comes down to that.
Exactly.
Because if they're working to make the money, but that's not what she wants, then yes, she's going to eventually leave you. It doesn't matter what you're bringing home. That's not what she values, right? That's not her worth. It doesn't matter what the money is at that point. It's hey, I want you here home with the kids at that point. And yeah, if we have to eat rice and beans for the extra week instead of having the steak, I'd rather do that. And I think that's the conversation. Every person's going to have a different situation. You mentioned maybe it's with the kids, if it's a single dad at the time.
Also, sorry to interrupt, man. Just thinking before I forget, the other hard choice that comes up is, you guys seen the price of daycare?
Yeah.
It's absurd.
Oh,
And it becomes cheaper for one of the parents to stay home with the kids than it is for them to work and pay for daycare.
Yep.
exactly what we do in my house.
Make an extra $2,000, pay $2,000 to daycare. And you're like, well, what if I just didn't work and we didn't have that expense? And that becomes tough because then now which parent's going to stay home?
Yep.
Which one's going to go to work? And then that becomes a whole new conversation.
Yeah.
It's
a lot.
I was going to say personal story corner for hard choices. The way I got into my career field, I was actually a manager with Starbucks at the time. And one of my good buddies who was already in the engineering field kind of reached out and said, hey, don't you know how to use this program? Didn't you use it some in high school? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, we could use some support right now. And so I started on a part-time basis there, and Starbucks, being the retail monster it is, was just stealing my soul a day at a time, man, in management. And so it was terrible, man. And so I ended up stepping down from management, and I started working with this engineering firm part-time. And so I did that for a little while, and then I was like, all right, I'd be working mornings at Starbucks, and then I'd work afternoon, early night with this engineering firm. And that was great and all. And it just got to the point where I was like, all right, like, I need to start a family. I had just started dating my now wife at that point, and we had been talking about that kind of thing. I think we were already engaged when this happened. And I was like, shit, I need to make a change. And so, again, another scary moment in the business world. I basically went to my boss at the engineering firm, and I was like, look, I can't keep doing this 2-job thing. And I was like, you either got to bring me on full time, or I've got to step away. And of course I was scared shitless that he was going to be like, man, we can't bring you on full time. And luckily he said, yeah, come on board. And I ended up leaving Starbucks. Thank God.
There you go.
But that's one of those just hard choices you got to make. And sometimes you just got to man up and dive into the deep end and hope for the best. But it all goes back to that communication piece, right? Talk with your spouse. That's where you're going to get the best support. And it's easy to make rash decisions when you're frustrated at work, you're overworked, you're stressed, you're not making what you want. And if you don't open that communication to say, hey, am I going crazy, or is this what I should be thinking? And so it's super. I mean, even for the guys out there that aren't married, like, talk to a good buddy about it. Just get an outside opinion. Say, here's where I'm at. Here's how I'm feeling. Does this sound right to you? Yeah. And if they agree, then, more than likely, you need to be looking to make a transition or a hard choice.
I got another interesting one to throw to you guys here and see what your perspective is. How do you guys feel about the whole 2 weeks notice, or giving the amount of notice when you do make a transition out of a job?
I'm all about not burning bridges.
Yeah, I'm the same on that.
I mean, no matter how bad a job is, life is never fair, right? And you never know when you might need to tap into a previous resource. No matter how bad they treat you, how many times they push you down in the mud, you just never know. So I'm a huge proponent of the 2
weeks. If I was
weeks.
treated bad, I'm leaving. If it got to that point.
No, you can leave. But
and the way Luke is looking at me, I think he agrees on that one. He's like, I've left many times.
Well, in South Africa, you actually have to give a month's notice. So I got over here in the States, and it's 2 weeks. I'm like, what? But a month's notice is too long, because then you find people stop caring, and then the whole quality.
Or they just let you go because you stop caring.
Lucas, you kind of touched base on, and I don't know if any of you guys have seen this one, but a lot of businesses, at least up here in Canada, if you give your 2 weeks notice, a lot of them are basically saying they'll pay you for the 2 weeks, but don't bother coming in, because they know that once someone's already given their notice, they're mentally not there anymore. They're not wanting to do the job. They're kind of checked out. They've already given their notice. This is most of the time, not in all cases. But so a lot of places have really resorted to saying, great, thank you for your service. We'll pay you for the 2 weeks and see you later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in South Africa, they split the difference kind of thing. They say, we'll pay you for 2 weeks and you can finish today. That way you get 2 weeks paid leave, 2 weeks unpaid leave.
Sounds great. I would just get 2 weeks and just keep quitting jobs if they were going to do it. Right? There's probably a system you could run 52 weeks a year that way.
Are you the 24-year-old that?
Yeah, that was your resume, wasn't it?
What resume were we looking at?
And Nick,
I was thinking, right? I see so many things with the dads groups and stuff, right, on work-life balance. What do you guys feel is like the average? Because we all know 40-hour work week is not a 40-hour work week in most places. And
you got to turn it off, man.
What's that?
You got to turn it off.
Yeah, you got it right. So, but what do you think most? How many hours do you think the average person really? Because if it was a true 40 hours, and you were home working from home, and it was just 8 hours a day, and that's all you did, and you turned it off, there's plenty of time in the day. But you
Yeah.
see most people, as you mentioned, Nick, right? Most the blue collar dads that are I'm doing 16-hour days, 18-hour days here and there, 6 weeks off, 6 weeks on, I mean, and 2 weeks off. What do you think is like the average day that most people are really putting in out from the home that they feel the work life balance is off?
I can give you the kind of general stat. The last that I heard and that I've seen is they've calculated it down to people who think they're working a 40-hour work week are averagely actually working about a 52-hour work week. Because on average, those 15 minutes that you're coming in early, those lunches that you're working through, those 20-minute extra phone calls that you've stayed after work for, those 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here of writing emails and checking phone calls after work. So they're now averaging the 40-hour work week is adding up to about 52 hours for the average person.
And that's why I say you got to turn it off. And I really learned how to turn it off during COVID because you had to. I mean, we were working from home and it was just too stupid easy to walk over to my laptop, fire it up, check some emails. And next thing I know, I'm working 3 extra hours at night, after the kid goes to bed and everything's quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know some professions you can't just turn it off, but if it's yourself that's driving those extra hours, like if you're the guy that just wants to be on top of emails, if you're constantly rechecking work that you did, you just gotta find a way to turn it off. I think that's the biggest way that guys, and this, I understand this may not be for someone who's in, like, let's say construction, for instance, but strictly speaking, if you're in, kind of working an office desk job type situation, I think that's the biggest bit of advice I can give is just find a way to turn it off. If you got a work phone, put that damn thing up in your bedroom, get it out of sight, because like I said, you glance at it once and see some email with a dumpster fire in it you got to put out, and next thing you know, you've been working for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to create the boundaries around it, because it's like, I come from a sales background, and if you're in sales, like, you don't want to miss the sale, but you also don't want to miss your kids. So you just have to be like, nope, hard stop 6 o'clock or hard stop 7 o'clock, and like you said, put the phone away, turn the Bluetooth on the watch off, and you don't even know, and just leave it.
Yeah.
Is there?
And it's not easy to do. You have to teach yourself to do that.
That's why I got a beeper again, just in case for those
beeper. Nice. You got a payphone outside you go to when it goes off.
Is there any discussion around implementing the 4-day work week out your guys' way?
Mm-hmm.
Some places. Yeah.
My wife. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think Seattle was like one of the bigger places that first started, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say. So my wife just started. Do what?
I don't think it's doing it yet. Seattle.
No, I don't think as a state, but like certain companies.
Yeah, it's like various companies. But like my company, it used to be it used to be just in the summer, started late spring, where you'd basically you could work 4 nines and take a half day Friday, or you could work 2 weeks of 4 nines, including Fridays, and take the second Friday off entirely. And my wife just started with another firm, and they do the same thing where they work 4 nines and then they take a half day Friday, which is awesome in the summer when you want to, take a weekend trip somewhere with the kids and family, things like that, or just take a damn break. If your kid's in school, you get out a little before the kid's out of school and just find some time to relax for yourself.
Yeah, go get a massage, something like that.
There you go. Because that works its way into the work-life balance question. It's always the case of how do you balance your work and your outside life? Do you go to the 4-day work week? Do you choose to make less money by working less hours, or how do you balance that work-life big question?
I think the work-life balancing is a myth. I think it's no end point. You know, you don't get a seesaw and just sit in the middle. The fun is the going up and the down. And if you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. It's
I think it's something created
so
that people said, "Hey, I'm sick of this job. I'm going to say I had no work-life balance to go somewhere else." Type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's just structuring your life in a way that fits the lifestyle you want. So you can still work super hard and put in the hours if you like, if you're still able to have that time with the family.
Are you gonna dedicate yourself and be goal oriented enough? Maybe you get up earlier before everybody else is up in the house, and you sneak a couple hours in if you're running your own business. I agree. It's totally a give and take. And even at my firm, I mean, we have a really, really good work-life balance, but that doesn't mean there's still not, like this past week, we had guys on a project that were working over the weekend and things like that. And that's always going to happen, right? It's unavoidable. But yeah, there are certain things you can do to limit it. And then as long as you can kind of ride those waves, and again, it goes back to communication, right? If you know you're going to be slammed at work, like Joe, I'm sure you probably had a conversation with your wife, like, "Hey, I'm prepping for this test. I'm going to need, some extra quiet time or something, whatever you need."
Yeah.
As long as you keep that communication open, when you get into those times where it seems like you're having less family time, then it's not like such a shocker. But if all of a sudden Joe's in the office till midnight every night and has no communication, his wife's like, what the hell's going on? So it's a totally different reaction from your family when you're more communicative about what's going on with your work-life balance.
Communication is so key in every facet of life. It really is.
Yeah, so I think that's what we've learned today, right? Communicate, and then if you're gonna go to your boss, go to Nick, because he's had great experience getting full-time jobs and reach out to Nick if you're deciding to go punch your boss in the face or ask for a raise or quit. That's what we want to make sure.
It's funny because now that we're reflecting on it, after I talked to my wife, after I talked to my buddy, I actually I don't remember which of the two dad groups I'm in. I posted it in, but I posted in one of them, and I was like, "Here's what I'm thinking about doing," and it was like 50-50 between guys being like, "Well, you better pack your shit because you're not gonna have a job after that conversation." And then there were some other guys that were like, "Yeah, man, like, do you go get what you are worth." And it was there was no middle ground. People were either all on board with it or pretty much like doomsday scenario.
That's like
so I was like, great, I'm gonna turn off commenting because this is starting to make me not feel good about this decision. So.
It's always easier to tell people to go for it when it's not them getting possibly canned at the end of the Friday or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I think the best advice I got when I first started talking about it was to interview with other companies, right? Because I don't realistically, I don't think I had a reason to be afraid. I think I'm great at what I do and great for the company. So worst case scenario, I think he would have been like, I'm sorry, Nick, like we can't pay you what you're asking. But other companies, I could see them where they're like, okay, this guy wants more money. He's unhappy. Let's hire somebody else and then let him go. So I do highly recommend it. At least interviewing, like I said, with some other companies, just so you have some sort of backstop if you need it and you're not, stranded in the job market if it ended up that way.
And people could always negotiate. We're talking work-life balance. They can negotiate vacation days.
Mm-hmm.
People don't think about that. It's always, hey, more money. But listen, if you got an extra 2 weeks off or out Friday early, or hey, I want to come in, and you could negotiate time like that or something. Hey, maybe that's that side gig that you have a little bit of passion about that you could generate an extra $100 a week with. That is that $400 a month that changes that family's life, but gives them that, that opportunity to maybe eventually transition.
Yeah.
So
give you some breathing room.
I got to ask about money, but maybe it's, hey, I want 2 extra weeks of vacation if you can't do that.
That's something also in the States is only 2 weeks of paid leave, which blew my mind when I got over here because it's minimum well, when I was in South Africa, minimum 3 or 4 weeks. So when I got a chance, I only 2. I was like, what? Like, there's so many things to do in a year. What do you mean 2 weeks?
Yeah.
I think it all wraps kind of back into the knowing your worth. You can bring it all right back to that and having that confidence to make those hard decisions, have those hard conversations, build your confidence. And with that comes the work-life balance. You know, when you are confident and happy and know your worth, you really have those abilities to be communicating with your spouse, to really be structured and prioritize your time. And it no longer becomes, at least in my perspective, it doesn't become that work-life balance question. It becomes your daily life and the choices you're making and doing your life and living your life. And when you are doing what you enjoy, you're doing what you love, and you're working hard, you're confident, and you know your worth, you're conquering the hard choices, I think it all comes together. It's some days are going to suck and some days are going to be amazing, but I think it all comes together. It's just, you got to know your worth inside.
Yep.
Agree.
I think that's the perfect way to close it out, Brian. You know, I think that's everything that we wanted to kind of touch on today for episode 2. Listen, guys, I think that was awesome. I hope our listeners can take some with it. I would love to see some people say, "Hey, Nick, I did what you said, and I got a $10,000 raise." Or, "Hey, Nick, I did what you said, I got fired. You owe me $10,000." You know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think that would be awesome.
Disclaimer:
to see,
not career advice. Just our opinion.
Yeah, we'll put that in there. Good. Yeah, make sure you write that in the notes.
Yeah.
But guys, this was awesome. I think this covered a lot of, right, as you see, is hard choices that as men, as dads, as careers, you know, we all have to make at some point in our life. I don't think there's anybody that hasn't had to make a hard career choice and life choice to get to where they want to be. But I think that's all we got for today. If anybody has any final words, you know, that want to take us out with it. But I think that's everything from me.
Easy choices. Check out the Time to Dad Facebook group. Drop us a like, subscribe. We got a ton more content coming up. So we hope to see you guys on the next episode.
Awesome.
Catch you later.
See you guys.
See ya.